screen from me here? I didn't have it.
Yeah, I see the PowerPoint. Yeah,
Splashdown.
I know that F5 will make it launch into a full screen where we won't see the left hand anymore.
Okay, I mean F5 on my end, huh?
You know, on my machine, I have to press function F5.
So it's not full screen?
Yeah, it's not full screen, but it's visible right now. I mean, you could just go with it what you've got right now if you want.
Yeah, I don't understand. We didn't have that problem when we first checked it out, did we?
No.
Run the presentation, whatever you need to do.
See the far left where it says from beginning? And it has an arrow, a green filled in triangle pointing to the right. Try clicking that right under the menu option that says file.
I don't know where you're at.
Upper left corner.
I don't have anything up there.
Oh, okay. So we're seeing something different than you, apparently. But there's a yellow band that says back up this document. And then above that on the far left, there says start slideshow. And then the leftmost button from that says from beginning.
But I need to share first, right?
Well, you eventually, yeah, you probably have to share first because the PowerPoint might take over that part of your Zoom screen. I've got your presentation also if you need to go that way.
So they're telling you, Al, within the PowerPoint slide.
There you go. Right there.
You got it.
Is this the way it's supposed to be?
You got it.
All right. Golly, it's so complicated.
Looking good.
All righty. Well, I was praying that these astronauts would land successfully or splash down successfully yesterday. And they did. So we'll talk about some fun that I had and some other guys had here. But this is a splashdown. I think it's 7:07 p.m. And I just took this picture off the TV right as they hit the water. So not a great picture, but it's good enough. So, Artemis is launched on April 1st, and it was a 10-day mission. And by all means, I think it was deemed successful. And I'll talk a little bit about what I did after I found out about the event, because it's kind of late to the party. So this will be talking about my reception of Artemis 2 and what I did to have a little bit of fun over the last week or so, even though it was in the middle of the night. It was really rough from that standpoint. So you've probably all seen this slide of different stages of the flight. And actually, I didn't start listening for it until it started to leave the Earth's orbit. A lot of other guys took some pictures of it within Earth's orbit, and that kind of got me psyched up a little bit. But they say it takes about 4 days to get to the moon. And I would say I just listened on the last couple of days. So it was already quite a ways on its way to the moon, probably at least a couple 100,000 miles out, being out 250,000 or so. There's several amateurs out there that have been put a lot of work into this, most notably Alex K6. Oh gosh, can't remember his call. QXY?
VHF.
Oh yeah, K6 VHF. Thanks, Barry. I was hoping you would chime in. They were working with an 18.2 meter dish out in southeast Colorado. And it's a fantastic dish. Actually, I worked them on 1296 terrestrial over for 600 miles. And also, our friend Pete Tyus in Zero OY in Kansas, he's got a 28-foot Kennedy dish, and he was also tracking Artemis. And then a 20-meter AMSAT DL dish over in Germany was tracking it. And Barry, I know, was working on it. Excuse me. And also CT1 BYM and several others. So I thought, well, I might as well give it a shot with my 5-meter dish. So this is my dish. It's been up since 1995, I think. So what is that, 30 some odd years? And it's a fiberglass dish, but it works well to 10 gigahertz. But that's my primary dish. And previously, there were a couple of lunar prospectors out there, and I know there's another one out there now, but in 1998, I copied the lunar prospector on 2273 megahertz, and then the Japanese lunar orbiter on 2263. And what was kind of neat about that is they were orbiting the Earth was I can peak on moon noise, and then I peak on their signal, and I can tell, we'll say what quadrant of the moon that they were in as they were going around. And what was really neat is when they go behind the moon and the Doppler changes rather rapidly and it goes high in frequency, then you lose it until it comes back around again. So having had some success back then, I thought, well, might as well give Artemis a shot. And of course, keep note that these are not in our ham bands. They are below the ham bands, 2273 and 2263. So what does Artemis 2 use for communication? Well, they've got a lot of sophisticated systems, and one of them is an optical communication system using laser. And also, they use a deep space network and what they call a near space network. Well, those particular networks really consist of 2 gigahertz, 8.4 gigahertz, and also 31 or 32 gigahertz. And the deep space is really more for objects that are further out than the moon. I think it's like 1.5 million miles or so is kind of bridges between near space and deep space. So, moon's not that far away. It's only 250,000 miles. So that's kind of easy, right? And then the traditional mode of communication is the S band. And that's kind of nice because it allows me to use, my existing system, if you will, even though it is kind of out of band, but why not? And they use it for telemetry, voice, and data. And none of which I could really copy other than seeing strange data out there and a carrier. And but I thought, well, it'll still be just kind of fun to see what I can hear and look at the signal levels. And Artemis uses 2216.5. So if I had an SDR capable of that, that would be easy, but I didn't. So I got to be creative and build something. But before I go ahead and do that, I thought, well, how can I track this thing? Because, once it's to the moon, I mean, I've got coordinates for the moon, that's easy. But if they're on their way to the moon, I can't aim at the moon and hope to hear them. Well, I think it was Sam G4DDK that suggested N2YO.com. And initially, I got too much advertising in there, but it seemed to have quieted itself down. And I use that as well to tell me approximately where it is, even though I think the distance calculations are off. And I can't tell you why, but I can tell you, though, that once it landed, it said the altitude was minus 1,000 miles. Obviously, that's not true. So I figure, well, okay, that kind of confirms the fact that the altitude calculation wasn't exactly right. Or I don't understand how they're making the calculation, one or the other. But at least the as and L seem to be pretty accurate that it spit out. And what's really kind of nice, even if you don't know where you live, if you're connected to, if you have an IP connection, it'll give you the coordinates based on your IP address. So that's another way to go. But anyway, it came in pretty good at 33.1 and minus 96.6 for me. So I just let it use the IP address, which I think actually is out of McKinney. The other website that is probably the most accurate, even though it doesn't give you a lot of information, or I haven't found it yet, is the Unistellar website. and it's for moving targets. And this is kind of slick. And I use this just to kind of confirm that the other website wasn't too far off. And you select a target. So I selected Artemis 2. You select an address. You can let it, use your IP address, and you give it a range on the date and the time, and it generates data. And I didn't pay a lot of attention to the increment. I just figure, well, I'll kind of get close, and I should be able to peek up on it. This gives you some idea of the data that comes out. The right ascension and declination, if you had a polar mount. For me, as L mount, it was at 16 degrees altitude and 141 azimuth. And the way it turns out, the moon is at the worst place in the sky for us, because obviously they're headed on a straight line to the moon, or fairly straight. But the moon right now is in the south. It's at apogee, and it's extremely low in the sky, like 20 degrees or so. And there was a time, when the Artemis was even below that, and that's getting a little low for me in terms of not screwing up cables and such, because I'm not used to looking at the moon at the low altitude anyway. But the data here agreed pretty close with the N2. Oh shoot, I'm going to go back here. I don't want to get it wrong. This guy, N2YO, N2 Yankee Oscar. So I was at least happy that I could at least track the moon, or the Artemis. And what really kind of got me going was K0PRT. This is Alex K6QXY posted this. This is kind of early on April 3rd. So it's 2 or 3 days after launch. And he was showing this waveform, which was really part of a sine X over X plot. And I was hoping maybe I could see something similar to that, but I never really knew, when it would be transmitting this. So it's kind of like pot luck. And here's another plot by CT1BYM. I'm not sure how big his dish is, but I think I remember seeing a picture. It's a mesh dish, so it's probably at least 3 or 4 meters in size. And this is kind of the waveform that I was looking for. It's peaked on 2216.5, and you got a couple of side lobes there. And I assume that they're transmitting data, or could even be voice, because this is also a voice channel. So the first day for me was April, and I had no success. I had hooked up my down converter to a couple of amplifiers, and I looked at on my spectrum analyzer because somebody said that they could see it on there, and I saw nothing. But then I realized that the sense was backwards. And EME operation is we transmit right hand and receive left hand, and unfortunately, I had to get the receiver over on the right-hand port. And I really didn't feel like going out there and changing things over. So I thought, well, I'll just disconnect the power going to the Klystron going to the transmit cable, and I'll attach a down converter there capable of receiving at 2216. And like I mentioned before, I didn't have an SDR that would be capable of receiving that, and of course that'll change in the future. But I built up a converter so it would down convert to 10 meters on my Flex 6600. All I cared was to see the signal itself. Well, if you're going to build a superhet converter or down converter, you need a filter. And fortunately, Kent gave me this filter quite a while ago. I never ended up using it, probably because it's 2304 is up towards the high end. This filter covers roughly 2180 to 2320, and you can see where 21 or 2216.5 is. That's the cursor. So I thought, well, this would be ideal. It provides a lot of LO rejection and image rejection. So that's the heart of my converter. And here's the simple converter I built up. I had to get a preamp. I know some preamps that Demi builds and also Tommy builds have some SAW devices in them. Well, the SAW devices cover 2400 to 2483, or frequencies higher than 2304. But I didn't get any or didn't have any gain down at 2216. So one of Tommy's preamps was broadband, and I used it to drive this ZQL 1900, which is a high dynamic range 1900 megahertz LNA, and that bandpass filter. And I found a mixer that seemed to be rated at the frequency. And I needed some sort of an IF amplifier. And I tried various things like some broadband amplifiers, and I was having all sorts of trouble with LO getting into the noise figure meter. So I found an old Janelle 144 PV preamp. And you guys might remember what that is. It's like a 3N 140 and two stages of bandpass filtering, one on the input and one on the output. It looked good on the noise figure meter, but was not necessarily a broadband down converter because of that. And then I used my HP signal generator at 2072 megahertz. And I had a noise figure of 1.2 dB and gain of 28.7 at 2216, and I thought that's more than enough. So on April 6th, the morning of the day that Artemis circled around the moon, so we're on the left side of the moon, and the signal is it's Doppler shifted below because it's leaving us. And I just saw a signal at 822 Zulu, and then it disappeared. And that was confirmed by N0OI. And Pete and his crew up there in Kansas, I think they were up all night. And of course, 0822 is not 822 in the morning. That's 3:22 a.m. Central Time. So that's tough to get up at those hours. So I trekked Artemis for the next few hours with varying success, hoping I would see the I'll call it the beacon again. And I figured the beacon was there so they can do Doppler measurements. And I just wanted to take a look at it, but I knew it was below the nominal frequency, so I knew it was still going away. And at 10:15 Zulu, which is a couple hours later, besides getting tired, I started to see something happening down at you can see it on the top plot down at the low end. And I don't know that you probably can't see my cursor, I'm sure. And then there's also another signal down here in the bottom.
We can see your cursor.
You can, okay. All right, so there's some broadband signal up here, and this is over a narrower passband, if you will, or narrower frequency range. Here is a broad frequency range. This is from 2213 to 2219, so maybe 6 megahertz. And this slope is most likely because of that Janelle preamp. I'm not used to building broadband flat receivers. But you can also see this signal, which is not the same one I'm seeing up here. So I imagine if I went down in frequency on this slice up here, I could probably see this a little bit better. But that may have been, I mean, that's a big signal right there. So I think I just kind of missed that at 10:15, but none of these last for long. And I've got no idea what schedule they're on. I mean, they're on their own schedule, and you just got to sit yourself in front of the radio. Now, I know Pete Sias has had some other connections to some NASA sites, which kind of allows you to find out what they're doing, but I didn't have knowledge of that. I'm just kind of the new kid. So here's another one. This is what, 11:30 Zulu, and I see 3 little signals right here, and you can see some signals in between. So it looked like a kind of a picket fence in a way. And you can see it looks a little ratty down here, like there's something going on. And here, 11:34, another shot. 11:54, a pretty good sized signal down here. And actually, it's probably 15 dB over the noise. But it's got some real fast Doppler on it. And I got to tell you, during the day, when I monitor this and there's nothing else on the band, this is a super quiet piece of land, if you will. It's just too bad our 2304 ham band doesn't look this clean, and the same with 2400. But this is like sacred land here, frequency wise. and I can see why they want to keep everybody away from it. But just kind of nice to see a clean 13 centimeter spectrum for once. So that was April 6th. April 7th, Artemis had already gone to the back side of the moon, the dark side of the moon. The Doppler is now positive. He's still about 200,000 miles away. And the next few slides I have show the primary beacon signal at 2216 plus Doppler and various other artifacts. So now I'm starting to get happy. Here's the signal at 2216.5 and looks like maybe a couple of kilohertz of Doppler. Now, I was just initially looking at this in the CW mode, and I did go over to upper sideband mode so I could look at the actual zero beat frequency, because theoretically, if there's no Doppler and I'm on upper sideband, I should see a zero beat at 2216.5. So the signal, I took this with, I don't think I was even peaked on Artemis because I lost it the day before, and I'll be darned if I was going to lose it today. So signals do get better, and it may be because of my tracking. Here's at 0817, we're a little bit better. You know, on the pan adapter, it shows maybe 20 dB out of the noise. And I played around a little bit with the passband just to see it a little bit better. I don't like having it zero beat with the cursor because it's kind of hard to see it. Sometimes that kind of nulls it out, and I'd rather have it up in the audio passband where I can at least listen to it. But you can see it's getting a little stronger. And it's actually, you can see it down here in the broadband plot. It's a pretty good signal. I mean, approaching, it does approach, let's see. Yeah, this one here, 0847. This is probably the strongest signal. And you can see it down here. It's pretty substantial right here in a wider passband. Now, I did this out, but these are spurs down at 29 megahertz because my IF is 29 megahertz. But still, I was very happy, with the size of this signal. And it's not S5. That just happens to be the noise level of the receiver. I don't mind the higher noise levels because it tells me that the system's working. If I had everything resting down on S0, I wouldn't know if it was working or not. So, but I hardly use an S meter anymore. I use the pan adapter. So I was pretty happy with this particular day, if you will. Here's 0848, another good looking signal. But it's actually peaking almost 30 dB out of the noise. And 0901, the carrier disappeared again. I'm glad I got up early to look for it. And I say most likely switch to a communications or data handling mode. I'm not sure, what schedule they're on. I know N0OY had some connection with some site that told them what actually was being sent at the time, but I didn't have a chance to look into that. And yesterday morning, before it splashed down, I got up at, this is what, 6:30. I got up at 6:30 and I thought, oh, what the heck, I'm gonna go listen for it. And I saw something even different, but this is probably similar to what I saw earlier when it was further out. And I can actually see kind of a cluster here of signals that seem to be in higher amplitude than out here. And especially since this thing is trailing off in my receiver, I think this is the cluster right in here that I'm seeing on the top graph.
I think that's your sin X over X. And
Yeah, I think this is as close as I've gotten to it. Yeah. So, but that's not anything compared to what Pete Sias got here or has. I'll show you some slides from him here in a second. I just kind of want to summarize what I was doing here. My effective noise figure for this was about 3 dB at the antenna because I had a 1.2 dB noise figure, 1.9 dB of heliax getting to the feed. And so, with a 3 dB noise figure and the roughly 39 dBi a gain and 30 dB of signal to noise ratio tops, I think even a 20 dBi antenna could have seen the signal at 10 dB over the noise. And if I had a lower noise figure LNA out there, would it be even better? The problem with this is if you're going to get out there with a helix antenna and 20 dBi, you're going to have to track it for probably hours just so you can see, uh, everything that it's transmitting. But I'm sure they're on some sort of a schedule. But it always seemed like the tone was in there earlier, and maybe at 4 in the morning or whatever, they got their wake up call out there, possibly. I don't know, but if you're willing to spend the time at it, it was fun. Now, Pete has offered to do a presentation for us at a future meeting. Now, Pete and his crew up there have a 28-foot dish, and they're using a hack RF. Actually, he said he had two hack RFs. One of them was receiving IQ data, and they did this for hours up there. And they've stored the IQ data, and now I guess they're in the process of crunching the data to look at Doppler, and that was what they primarily wanted to do. He used a second hack RF for just kind of tuning around, if you will, which was kind of basically what I was doing with my Flex. But there's his primary signal, and that was at 0730. That's pretty early in the morning. That's oh shoot, what is that? That's 2:30 in the morning. I'm sleeping. Here's a little bit later, 0945, and you can see some sort of a modulation going on. I'm not sure exactly what was being transmitted there, but this is the best plot. And I'm not sure why I don't see the sidebands in there, unless they really are in there, but further down. But this is a nice cluster of, I guess, a modulation waveform of such. But I never quite saw it, but I didn't have as big a dish as what he has and what K0PRT has. But it was just a lot of fun, kind of a moment's notice after they launched to try to get something going. And I enjoyed it, even though I didn't get a lot of sleep. So I threw this slide in here after I sent my file to you, Jim, because the Amateur Deep Space Network is where a lot of guys hang out. And thanks for reminding me today, Barry, in your email. So I went out there and actually applied for membership in this group and was accepted. And I think in the future, I'll try to be a little bit more prepared for the next event, whenever it is. So like I mentioned, Pete offered to speak at a future meeting, which I think would be great. And but for me, it was just fun to copy it, hear the beacon signal. I did decide that, considering not all the lunar orbiters and landers are on the same frequency, it's probably time to go buy a hack RF or something like that, and maybe use external filtering just to keep the hack RF from being overloaded. But I was really pleasantly surprised, like I mentioned, that band was as clean as it was there. So that's encouraging. And maybe next time I'll consider recording some signals like Pete and the other guys were doing. Now, Pete did mention that there is a Korean orbiter on 2260.8. And actually, when I Googled it, it looked like it had been active for a couple of years. And the Lunar Prospector was active for a couple of years as well. So there's always a signal to look forward to or look for on around the moon. So I'm looking forward to the next event. Hopefully you enjoyed the presentation. Are there any questions or comments out there?
Al, this is Pat, W5VY. Do you have
Mm-hmm.
any idea about the transmit in, what the ERP might be, what kind of antennas, power levels they're running?
No. In fact, when I Googled it, it looked like that was secret information.
Aha.
So maybe that was just a search engine, but yeah, I tried to look for that. I don't know how on the Lunar Prospector, we knew what it was because I put it in my presentation back then. I forget what it was, but and it was also on a different circularity because I didn't have to change ports, if you will, back then. So I'm not sure if they're gonna keep the circular polarity the same as it is now, or why they even changed it. I have no idea, but I don't have any particulars on it. That'd be
Okay.
something that we can ask Pete Sias, or maybe
I think I've
you
got
don't.
some information, Al. I'll look for it while we're talking here. I think
Okay,
transmitter was 10 watts, I think, but I don't know what the antenna was.
okay. I assume that all this stuff burned up when it separated before the capsule came in. Is that kind of your understanding?
Probably did. That's right.
Yeah, because it
I
looked
can
like there.
comment a little bit more on this too. The Deep Space Network guys did work really hard on this project. And actually, NASA put out a request some time ago for people that wanted to participate that had the tracking capability to monitor this carrier and against real accurate GPS type timing to provide Doppler shift information back to confirm the location of the spacecraft. They
Right.
actually had the amateur community involved. And if you look on the Deep Space Exploration Society's webpage, there's an article there about that. And they pretty heavily are involved with Sarah. And there's a guy there, Rick K0GD, which has been in the business of making GPS systems for a long time. He was helping them a lot with the GPS tracking things. And I think because they were accepted and involved, and other people were too, they were getting this inside information like you were talking about
Right.
the schedule. And I have one thing that they posted here that I could share and show you if you're interested in seeing it. That
Yeah. Do
was
you want to
posted.
do it now, or
Yeah, I can do it now if you want to.
all right? Let me stop sharing.
Uh, well, I'll just share the entire screen and then get it to come up. Okay, I can't do it now because didn't have the authority on my system. I can come back later and show you the graph, but it was posted on the Sarah website showing their tracking information, and the software looked very similar to what you were showing. But what they did was they showed like a continuous Doppler shift over time that they got from monitoring the thing.
Mm-hmm.
The EIRP was plus 49 dBm.
Okay.
So what's that? 80 watts ERP?
Think that the antenna had any gain?
Not a heck of a lot.
Was that EIRP?
Yeah.
So at least 10 watts, right?
More than that. But that would be,
Well, 50 would be 100 watts, so
Yeah, I
49
know, but at
is
least 10
80.
with some gain, though.
Yeah.
it could be, but the EIRP is coming off the antenna.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, it was fun, and it was a short project, and I think it's prompted me to try to get more involved next time, but not to the level those guys are. I mean, that's when I talked to Pete, he was like a zombie because he'd been up all night, and he had some help from some other fellows, and so it was a nice project for him. So looking forward to hearing from them.
Al, this is Steve, K5MNZ. I was curious what the Doppler sounded like. Was it constantly moving across your receiver? Or were you having to retune it, or did you track it automatically, or what?
It wasn't moving very fast, but I was not that was not my primary goal, was to do that. It looks like Barry's got something here. Is this from K6 VHF?
Yeah. I don't know what the heck Zoom is doing for me here.
I see something.
Oh, are you seeing something for me?
Yeah.
That was for me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That was for me. I got it
Oh,
to share a
Oh,
little
okay.
bit.
It's from
Did you
Bob.
see the graph? I'll share it again if you want to look at it. I couldn't get my microphone turned on. It was on top of it. But this is the graph they posted on the Sarah website showing the same sort of, it looks like the same thing you had on one of your slides in terms of the stuff over on the left. So I think somebody put this app together to help track this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like it's varying wildly, but this is only it looks like a 300-second interval here that they had on the left. So I don't know how their software works for sure, but it says it says log, and I guess that means that they're logging the information, not that it's a logarithmic curve. But that's just something they put out. I'm thinking they're going to put up a story later with more details about their whole event, probably.
And after they regurgitate all the data, at least that's the impression I got from Pete Sias.
hey, Bob, that looked like they had high water marks on that right side graph.
I don't know.
Well, the top one, I glanced at it just as you turned it off. Earth orbit,
Oh, yes.
15 to 30 dB SNR.
Yeah.
Okay. So those are kind of the min max, I guess, that they chose to mark there.
Mm.
But you study this curve right here or this information, you kind of got insight into how they were going about doing it for helping NASA anyway, I think. I'm sure they're proud of what they did. They worked for several months trying to get all the pieces right. And they were very worried about their tracking system being able to keep up and to track it. And apparently got it all worked out.
Yeah, because when I'm tracking the moon, at least on the upper bands, if I'm off a little bit, I can change the Doppler as I sweep across the moon. So you got to be dead nuts in the center to get accurate information. I'm not sure I could do that.
Al, do you get a lot of EME contacts with your setup?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah. Tens, hundreds, or thousands? What kind
I don't
of?
know, it's probably thousands total in the last 25 years. I mean, to be
Okay.
honest with you, if you think it's pretty, sparse on terrestrially, go to the moon. You'll find activity um, almost daily there, especially 1296. But even 432, 2 meters, 902, kind of by invitation, if you will, because there's so few people on. But 1296, 2304, very active. 3 gig, less so because it's um, it's not quite a how would you describe it? I guess internationally, it's just not as popular. 5760 is less than 2304, but then you get up to 10 gigahertz. There's a lot of activity, and the solar cooker that the
Yeah.
guys I've been talking about. If you Google or Amazon solar cooker,
I've got
I
one
think
in my garage in the
yeah, I think it's
box.
like a meter and a half or something. And
80
a
bucks.
lot of
Yeah.
guys are using that on 10 gigahertz and 1296. And it works very well, but there's a ton of activity on the moon.
What
That's for
if you
sure.
had to pick one band all in, what band would you pick if you wanted to make a
For my
boatload
for
of
my
EME
solar
content?
cooker.
No, for all things aside, if you were a new guy and you said, hey, you can pick one band to make EME contacts, what band would you suggest
Oh,
to make the most contacts?
sorry about that. It's kind of a toss up between 1296 and 10 gig, I guess.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
And I mean, you make them morning, noon, and night. Like, doesn't matter what time of day, as long as you've got visibility to the moon, you're good to go, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, unless it's sitting behind the sun or something, or in front
Well,
of the
yeah,
sun.
yeah, you gotta have visibility. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, like you say, visibility. Yeah, and when it's at perigee, it's better than apogee by a couple of dB. And where the moon was this past week, where the orbiter was near apogee on the moon. That's why it was so low in the sky.
Uh, so your apogee, you said lower was better or higher?
Well, declination wise, at apogee, um, well, I got to be careful there.
Yeah.
It does shift around. It's got like a 20-year um, slow peak in there. But right now, in fact, I can't remember if that was perigee or not. It's just low deck, but low deck doesn't always occur. I think it's occurring closer to apogee now, and perigee, fortunately, is coming around at high decks, which is really nice because you get a lot of moon time, at least for northern um, latitudes. But
Okay.
it does rotate and be about another 20 years, and this will repeat. But there have been times when perigee was in the south, and I guess it's great for working guys south of the equator, but also the Milky Way's down there, and not great for 2 meters.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Barry, do you have anything else you wanted to add? I know your experiences was kind of short lived there, but
Yeah. Well, the only thing I would add is with that SDR, and I'm not sure what the hack RF is like, but I was using an SDR play, was it RSP1B, which died a few days after I went to use it for some odd reason, but it would allow you to store the IQ data. And so what Pete down there in Kansas was doing was storing the IQ data, and then I think they're shipping that off to NASA for analysis. I think he got about 5 terabytes worth of IQ data. Um, the other thing, like they were switching modes, and I gather that when the crew was sleeping, they were powering down the wideband facility so that Sine X over X dome
mm-hmm.
would disappear, and I don't know what they were putting up instead, but something that was saving them power, I guess. So
Yeah, it
uh,
makes sense.
yeah, so I mean, it wouldn't take like that SDR play that I had was about half price of what the fancy ones that transmit and receive, and yet it was capable of dumping the data down if I'd had enough signal. So and yeah, I guess that's about it. I was going to say for EME bands, if you want to work a lot of countries, go on 1296. If
Okay.
you don't want to go with a bigger dish, like on 10 gigs, a 1 meter dish and 10 watts will get the job done at best of time conditions. So that's almost a portable rig. Well, it is a portable rig.
Yeah. But
One.
you say 10 watts though.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's not so easy to do, but it is easier than, 100-watt class. So,
Well, it's 600 watts on the 1.2, right?
yeah,
Um, all right. Well, that's
1296 would be the easiest band to get on, and activity-wise, it's going to be higher than 10 gigs, but depending on your situation, 10 gigs is a good band for sure.
okay. Good. Good to know. I didn't. I hadn't realized there would be so much activity on the moon at 10 gigahertz, but you know, a 3-foot dish is pretty manageable.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's the
Um,
beauty of the 10 gigs is
yeah.
If you want to go online, whenever there's activity on 432 or above, or even 222, HB9Q logger is where most people hang out.
Okay.
So if you just do hb9q.ch and go get on the logger and pick a band, and somebody may say, "Hey, are you about ready to get on the air, or what? What's your situation?" But you can just say, "Hey, I'm an SWL trying to learn." They're real friendly people that I've found. But then you get some idea of who's on the band, and you can also click on a particular call. So when you get to a logger, sometimes you may have to be patient, but put your cursor on either his name or the call, and it should show you what the person was running. So you'll have some idea.
You said it was HB9Q?
Yes.
Here it is. Yeah. Okay.
And he's got it set up where you have to, it'll log you out after a day. Used to be able to sit in it, but there's so much congestion there because there's so many people that once you get in, you're good for probably 24 hours, and then it'll sign you out even if you don't. But not a big deal.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, one step at a time. That's my goal, is to get to EME. So that's what we're working towards.
I'll have to get you over when I come back from this next trip and give you a little demo.
I would love that.
Probably should make an open house out of it, Al, because there's several people that would probably come.
Okay. Well, that's it, Jim.
Thank you. Any other questions for Al before we move on? Okay. Let's move on to propagation presentation. And I see a couple of people that are here that have contributed and collaborated. So I just want to ask you to keep me on the straight and narrow here in case I miss something. Let me reset this because I really want this in presenter mode. Now I'm going to show my ignorance. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. I'll do the best I can here. I have notes on some of these slides to try to keep me from forgetting some stuff. Anyway, this is part 2. We gave a part 1 presentation at the last meeting, which was just a month ago, and there's been a lot of changes, and so many that it's been a little hard to keep up with. For my sake, and in fact, if I didn't have help from AI, I literally couldn't keep up with the changes. So let's jump into it here. But first of all, got to move something out of the way here. The title of this slide is Significant Discoveries, because we stumbled onto this kind of as a curiosity item. I work with AI at work quite a bit, and we've always wanted some tools around propagation that were better than what we were doing at the time, which was a lot of guessing and scratching our head after sometimes something good would happen and just writing it off when things didn't work, you know. So several times I've said, well, I'd give anything to have a better propagation tool, but I wanted it for the higher bands, but talking 24 and 47 gigahertz and higher. So in this presentation, we're going to recap the beginnings and the changes that have led to a more complex project. Without saying more, the single biggest boost to the project is the collaboration of multiple team members. First of all is Graham McIntire. He's in attendance here. Whiskey 5 India Sierra Papa. He's an engineer with in-depth experience of back-end server functionality, and he owns a wireless internet service with multiple microwave backhaul systems. So in Graham, we have an amateur radio operator with professional experience who is acquainted with basic propagation, also had the strong desire to understand the anomalies in propagation, and understood the terminology, and has a family history with his father, Greg. And I don't know what else, but those are the things I do know about Graham, and there'll be more about him to come here. Joe Jureka is the next one I'll mention, November 5, Papa Yankee Kilo. Joe is a senior meteorologist. He's really a weather scientist with 20 years of radar experience, stationed at NWS Lubbock, and he has been responding to our ask of scrutiny on our approach and strategies. He has given us response, suggestions, and compliments, and critiques. And I'll also mention Mike Lavelle, K6ML. Mike, I don't know all of his background, but I do know he's a retired engineer at Sun Microsystems. I do know he holds the 122 gigahertz DX world record holder. He is the holder. And that in and of itself has a whole story behind it, and the somewhat manual calculations over the science involved that we are now embracing as well. So what he brought about several years ago was an advanced look at the same science and same techniques that we've now approached an automation point. So a recap of part one, the question was, what mechanism in the atmosphere enables long over-the-horizon contacts at 47 gigahertz? This is just the thing that bugged us, because we had first a 57 kilometer contact, then we had a 99, then we had 117. And obviously we knew there was a bending taking place, and it had to be a duct of some sort. So just started asking questions of AI. First, we took a look at the answer that it was giving back, and it was just for a single contact. We knew that the duct was based on some factors that it extracted for us and began to show us, what it was finding, and those were with surface-based observations. And then we asked, well, let's put in the SKU-T data as well. And we added additional contacts at 47 gigahertz and a couple at 24 that were in the 200 kilometer and beyond range, which seemed, very exceptional. So this is all going into a conversation with Claude, an AI tool. And then we said, build a predictive tool using everything we know up till now, and also use real-time inputs in order to make the prediction as good as possible. So what resulted was a surface-based model with 7 scoring elements with calibration from just 4 contacts. Here is the ASOS, a typical station on the left, automated service obs station, and some dots on the map to the right that shows the distribution. So I won't go into great detail here except the first couple here, but the 7 scoring factors that came out from, I would call it almost a neophyte model compared to what is going to come next. But it was enlightening nevertheless. And this is where we were a month ago. 2 factors, the absolute humidity is the largest weighting factor when considering propagation, but we find out from Graham's additional work that the humidity impacts actually flip at 10 gigahertz for a benefit, and we'll get into a little more detail. And then on wind, whether it's calm or it's a little more than calm, this turns out to have been overweighted by our original model, and we have dropped it back to an 8% weighting factor. Of course, that gives us 10% extra to deal with, which I'm not going to try to explain here, but we'll talk about it a little bit more. Some of the other, I would call them dimensions, the sky radiative cooling, time of day, T over TD depression, season of the year, and pressure subsidence factors. So our first map turned out to look like this. You could select an ASOS station, and it was riding on a composite score of the 7 factors, and it put colors up here. You could pick between 24 and 47 gigahertz. The colors would change. You could hover over them to see which station was reporting. It's just a little bit better than looking at a weather map, maybe, but it was calibrated to the contacts, and it was calibrated to the factors with their weighting. Now then, we asked for skew T-plots to be added, and there are these factors here, which I'll touch on lightly, but we'll spend a little more time on this first one, which is min dN over dH gradient. This requires knowing the temperature and dew point at every pressure level from surface to 200 HPA. 200 HPA you might think of as the top of the troposphere. You'd have to have oxygen if you were at that level. Inversion layers require seeing where the temperature increases with altitude, invisible from the surface observations alone. The duct layers, or known as the M profile, require computing modified refractivity at each level and finding where it decreases with height. The BL depth requires seeing where the potential temperature profile departs from the surface value, and the lifted index and K index require different pressures, temperature, and dew point simultaneously. Now on the min, dN, and dH, jump down to the bullet points here. This is really like looking up from the bottom of a swimming pool. If you've ever been on the bottom of a swimming pool with your eyes open, you can see that the light is being refracted. And RF in the atmosphere does the very same thing, and that amount is known, or that capability is known as the refractivity index. The refractivity index of air isn't the same at every altitude. And when dN over dH exceeds minus 157 per kilometer, we have ducting. The more negative this number, the stronger the duct. The min dN dH is the minimum altitude that the tool is determining the best dN dH occurs. And this plays into something important. So we created some other apps, and I'll touch on these briefly because they've largely been eclipsed now by what has come about now. But this in the upper left was a millimeter wave link budget analyzer. You input 2 grids, nominal station values such as transmit power, receive bandwidth, noise figure, antenna heights, antenna gains. You click this button, analyze path, and you get the kind of the middle graph here where you see what looks like a suspension bridge. Well, that's a straight line profile over a flat Earth projection. And the ragged line up at the top is the actual protrusion of the Earth bulge. So it's nowhere near line of sight in this particular graph. And then below the suspension bridge effect image, you see the percentage of link closure, which is pretty poor in this particular case. In the upper right, this is pretty hard to see, but there is a link, we would call it a link margin value in dB. So when that number's down below about 10 dB signal noise, you're on the edge of being able to. Now, some people would say different. They would say, well, I can work a CW signal down to 3 or 4 dB above the noise. But for purposes of this kind of analysis, it's just not that accurate. So you would need more than 3 dB for sure. The SKU-T plot have now been added, so the lower right-hand side shows an analysis of the SKU-T plot with an indication of where the ducts are and additional metrics. Here was an additional app that we made. This was more about how did a contact occur. So it's what it did was it accepted 2 grid points and the time of day and the date, and then it would go back and find the SKU-T plots, the observations on the surface, and it would piece together an explanation as to how that contact occurred. That was pretty interesting to me for about 30 minutes, and just looking at a couple of cool contacts we had. We made the app load with a contact that my partner and I made, Paul, KI5EMN. We made this contact with Pat, W5VY, in the 10 gigahertz and up contest, and he was in Echo Mike 23 Alpha Oscar, and we were in Echo Mike 02. This was a 350 something kilometer 10 gig contact, and it was a good one for us. It gave us all those extra points, and it was a typical early morning 10 gigahertz contact. Not that uncommon, but between 2 rovers, really 3 rovers, 2 on my side and 1 up on Pat's side, with antennas that are 4 feet off the ground, we'll take it. So these apps really were complementary, and the original 7 scoring factors, even though they're surface weather model bobs, they answer the question based on what's happening at the surface right now. How favorable do conditions look? That's about what we've always had. But this put it together in a graphical interface where we could quickly change where we wanted to look and that kind of thing. The derived propagation parameters from the addition of the SKU-T sounding, either the actual radiosonde balloon launch, which by the way is only twice a day, or the GFS model forecast, which we had also brought in, answers a different question. What is the actual vertical structure of the atmosphere, and is a duct physically present? Of course, this information will get old. I mean, just minutes could make the difference, hours could make the difference, but it's trying to be predictive. So all the apps then incorporated SKU-T from RAOB, and we see this temperature and dew point profiles from real radiosonde balloon launches at 0 and 1200 Zulu, and GFS forecast soundings from an API for a free service from openmedio.com. It gave us the observed and forecast toggle that you can see in this panel heading that is in one of the apps, where you can click between observed and forecast, and in the forecast you can select 6, 12, 24, and 48 hours. We were trying to move to a prediction, and I mentioned Mike Lavelle here again, because K6ML had this method with windy.com years ago. Okay, as I'm saying here, if I can get my finger to work, let's put it to use. So what we did, and this is all superseded somewhat now, but just a week ago, we were looking at these applications and the predictions. I was also looking at some of what Graham was developing. And the statement here is start observing the app predictions and real-time data versus actual conditions. So we were getting beacon reports pretty consistently from different people. Keith, WB5ZDP, was good to tell us about beacon signal levels. He was listening to a 10 and a 24 gigahertz beacon. Sometimes the 10 was stronger than the 20, was up more than the 24 over nominal, and sometimes the 24 was up over the 10. So, it was kind of behaving like we were learning to understand it. And then we start anticipating a truck roll, which I'll borrow from Mike Lavelle. It's a great description because it takes planning. Heck, I have to get my wife out here to help me load some stuff. I'm getting so weak and it's so heavy. But what triggers are we watching for? Well, first of all of us know that if the weather changes and we get good conditions and the weather stays stable, that's probably going to bode well for us. So I started looking last weekend for what would happen when that front came through, which wiped out our microwave activity day.
Where you go?
Behind the front, there was a prediction for Monday. And so that front rolled through Saturday into Sunday. And behind that front, there was some good-looking predictions in the tools that we have. And they were not only good for Monday, they were good for Tuesday. In fact, they were so good, it was hard to believe. I was beginning to wonder. But the conditions did turn favorable, and it was time to start talking to some people and seeing who was going to be available. Now, I still work. May 29th is my last day. I'm 74 years old, and I'm ready to get out of there. It's been a long time. And I still work. So Monday was one of the really busy days and just not available to me. But Tuesday morning, I could squeeze in a few hours of radio time. So I got a hold of some people. And here's what we got accomplished. And we'll cover a little about how the tools helped us here. You're probably not going to be able to read these grids. But first, Steve, K5MNZ, he just wanted to check out his LNA that he had put on his 10 gig rig, and he'd been jonesing for a few weeks to get out there and try it, and then we got rained out on Saturday, so he was ready to jump out there. He had found a high spot in a pasture on his ranch where the ground sloped away a little bit better than like from his driveway, and so we said, okay, I'll set up in EM12. It's about a 100-kilometer path. We set up to go on the air right at sunup, so before sunlight, really. We were on the air. The signals were extremely strong, and you would kind of expect that at 100 kilometers. But it was a good checkout, and I know Steve really appreciated it. And so then I got back in the truck and drove down to Hillsboro, which was not too far away, and I had got a hold of Keith, who needed another grid on 24 gigahertz. And this is a high spot that I have, but if you'll look at the path profile on the right-hand side, it's nowhere near line of sight. Yet we had good, strong signals at 129 clicks. I want to compare from our original tools some numbers right here because the story is in here. And you will see on the top data panel that this is 7 a.m. on Tuesday. We had a good number on the D&DH gradient, but we had excellent numbers in all the other categories, and it indicated that a duck was right on the ground, basically within 17 meters of the ground. I won't go into all of these details, but there is explanation further on. Then looking this morning at this same path, the only number that looks good is the top number, which is the D&DH. However, if you look at this closer, you realize that that duck that it's talking about is 3 miles high. So there's no coupling possibility. None at all. Now, if you were on one of those mountains out where the California guys live, you might have some chance at it, but you're not going to launch into a 3-mile high duct from the ground. You can see the duct on the left side compared to this low duct in the top panel. This is a slide from last month's presentation. I wanted to repeat it in here, both from a sanity check for me, but also for you, because where we were at then was we had 4 data points in 1 geographic corridor and 1 climate regime. That would be 500-mile radius of Dallas. And I said in this presentation last time, 2 or 3 years of community submissions across different geographies and seasons could give us enough data to start answering questions that nobody in the amateur microwave world has good answers to yet. Things like what the minimum atmospheric signature is that can support a 47 gigahertz duct contact, or whether there's a seasonal pattern to boundary layer inversion contacts outside of Texas, or how the required duct strength scales with path length. This would be novel empirical work. Now, to be sure, there were some people that could figure this out, but as far as sharing it on a broader basis, this is where we found ourselves headed. So I'm going to call this next section a transformation in analysis. Graham McIntire shifts the project into high gear. First of all, he expands the data set, and Graham, if I get this wrong, I think the first algorithm we called Algo 2 versus the original one that we had for the original apps sweeps in about 58,000 contest QSOs, which is 6 years of context. And these we cross-referenced with actual weather conditions at the time of the contact. This became the largest empirical millimeter wave propagation data set assembled for amateur radio. That did not take an hour. That took days. And I think at one point, Graham told me he had to change servers. That might have been when you were importing HRRR data, but he was still hitting thresholds on the data rights to the so-called disk. It's solid state nowadays, but Algo 3, add in 18,500 commercial link measurements, which are from the WISP backhaul links at 11, 24, and 68 gigahertz. This is continuous 24/7 signal monitoring with fixed paths, known geometry, and real-time calibration data. Graham also identified additional weather data sources and created interfaces to them. Among them are the upper air soundings, HRRR model data, IEMRE gridded hourly weather, shuttle SRTM terrain elevation data, the commercial link validation, and the solar indices. Anything you want to add here, Graham?
Yeah, just a couple of things. Yeah, as you mentioned about things changing rapidly, now there's 10 different criteria instead of 7. That just changed within the last hour based on new backfill data. We're also pulling ERA 5 data now because HRR only goes back to 2014. So any contacts that we had before that date, we have to get the data from that. And with the commercial link data, it's valuable, but in the opposite way that most people think. Since all of my links are point-to-point, I need the maximum signal strength, maximum modulation. When ducting happens, it ends up causing multipath with the links, and it drops the signal levels. So we're actually looking for drops on my commercial links mean better propagation for amateur radio.
That's interesting. Now let's just talk about some of the new applications that have been spun off from 2 things. I would say first is Graham's ability as a developer. to use modern tooling. And I'm not talking about AI. AI is definitely underneath, but just modern programming tooling, which is a whole world unto itself. I'm familiar with some of it, but not to the extent that Graham is in his area. And he has been able to leverage these tools to quickly develop applications that leverage the data. So incorporating the live scoring data and propagation grid scores, we have a map that covers the continental U.S. at .125 degree resolution. The update cadence of the data is stated here, hourly HRRR based via propagation grid worker, and 10-minute ASOS adjustments by the ASOS adjustment worker. Per grid point, the composite score 0 through 100 with 9 individual factor scores is calculated. The bands that are scored are 902 through 241 gigahertz. The retention is the 2 most recent valid times kept. Older data is pruned automatically. Now, usually live demos don't go well, but I'm going to try to take you through the web pages now that illustrate these various functions, which these are all different from our original apps because they really eclipse those apps, but we will leave them up for a little while. So let me see if I can do this without wrecking us. All right, this is the first one. You should be seeing the path calculator. So you can see all of these items across the top here, which all have a page underneath them. This first one is the path calculator, which is similar to one of our apps, only now it's sitting on a whole lot of data. And I had run this earlier today, so I'm going to put this grid in. This is the grid that I go to that's about 2 miles from my house. I do have to flip over the interstate, so it takes me about 10 minutes to get there in traffic. But my grid here is EM12IL74DR, and I noticed all you have to do is put a call sign in here. I'm not sure how Graham's doing that, but he's doing it.
It does a QRZ lookup and then geocodes the address that's in there. So
I got you.
If you have a
Okay.
PO box or something, it's going to be wildly off.
Okay. Now I got a little more power on 10 gigahertz, so I'm just going to run this for 10 gigahertz. My antenna, well, let's say that my antenna is 5 feet high and Al's is 60. I'll put those parameters in there. My transmit gain on the antenna is probably 33 dBi. And Al's probably got that on, at least on his, on his receive antenna. Let's calculate the path, clicking the calculate path button. And here it gives us a little map. We can zoom in a little on that. Shows us the topo path in the Fresnel zone on the bottom side there. Says it's 94.2 kilometers. It's given us a pretty good score. This is a little light, but it says 69 over 100. And here's the link budget. So it calculates total path loss at 231.3 dB. And it's given us all this power budget information here. And it's saying your margin's about 11 dB. So it's probably a little stingy, but maybe not. Maybe these conditions are not all like, oh, well, it's raining. So that's one problem. Not that that stops us on 10 gigahertz, but it might stop me from getting out of my truck. The humidity is getting a score of 95. So, you know, there's some yellows here that are, you know, indicating downgrades. And so there you go. That's the path calculator. Now let's just raise this to 24 gigahertz. Let's just say I could make all that much power.
Sorry, at the
And
bottom.
let's see how it changes.
the prediction over time based on the data we have right now.
It's doing what?
At the very bottom of the page, it shows that same contact, whether it's going to improve or decrease over the next.
These little vertical blocks have, you can hover over it. So at 0300 UTC, well, we won't be up. I won't get Al up at that time. That's 45, 44. Okay, so but we switched this to 24, and automatically looks like we got a penalty of 20 dB at least. Yeah, if we went back and looked at this free space loss and gaseous losses, and then of course it's even calculating diffraction loss, which would be terrain. You can get a quick look at how this is going to work or not work. Next, I want to go to the map. Now, I like to spin this up to about 24 gigahertz. There's 24. And automatically you see the decay in conditions. So we're down in the pores and marginals. And this is McKinney up here. This is Greenville, one of our haunts on 47.
So is this saying that even right now at 24 gigahertz, even if you had line of sight, it'd be poor, or is this for the ducting?
No, this would not cover like a line of sight. That would be on the page I was previously on, where.
Okay, that's what I thought. Just making sure.
Yeah, well, we would put in point A and point B, and it would detect that as line of sight. It's going to give you a bunch of thumbs up.
But this map chart right here with what you're showing is not line of sight with the colors. Like right now, it looks like the poor 33 to 49, right?
Yes, this
no matter what point you
completely ignores line of sight. It's only looking at
anything in this range. If you didn't have line of sight, there's no ducting really available, right?
Right, because line of sight.
That's right.
Making sure.
Right. But if we flip this back to 10 gigahertz, the picture will get better.
So this is saying if you didn't have line of sight, you might still be able to make a 10 gigahertz connection. Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
You can also click on any spot on the map, and it'll show you the weighted propagation for it.
Yeah. And when I do that, I want to be on 24. So let's look and find. So there's a kind of a corridor right here. There's actually a little green right here. But if we click over here by Canton, see, we get a 50 over 100. But if we click here, near where Keith lives, near Levon, 43 over 100.
So is this color coding showing propagation from a particular point to each of these color coded points? Or is it just the loss over that region?
I believe it's right over that region. It's aggregating all of the vertical atmosphere data.
Yeah, so what it's doing is each of those little blocks that you see is one vertical slice of the atmosphere that we get from HRR data. So it's taking each one of those vertical slices and applying our algorithm to it based on the weather conditions right now in that slice. How well do we think propagation is going to work? And that's what the plus down at the bottom does as well. HRR is an aggregated weather that takes into account all sorts of things. And NOAA puts out the model every hour that updates current plus 12 hours. So you can click, plus 12 and see, okay, with the current knowledge we have right now, this is what the same thing will look like in 12 hours.
But this is like passing through that cell. There's a certain loss, but wouldn't that have to be at a certain altitude also?
That's what the antenna height on the right is. So when you click on a spot, it's still a little too splotchy than it should be because it's actually taking into account SRTM elevation data, and the everything is like Jim said, everything is changing like hourly at this point. So
Right, but
it doesn't take into account like the elevation of somebody receiving it or something like that. There is a tool that's very, very early for planning rover missions that will do things like that, but right now it doesn't.
okay, so these are basically individual conditions at individual points at the height of the antenna. So essentially, one of the two endpoints on the contact.
Correct. Yeah, it's
you haven't really got to the point where you're saying I can pick 2 points and figure the elevation profile along that path and figure the loss of each of those segments.
well, that's what the path that Jim said a little while ago does.
The path that's based on the actual.
And then the rover planer is the ultimate. It's not up right now. It's very broken, but it's the ultimate. If I'm going to go play on a Saturday or something to go out and make contacts, you'll be able to select. Say I want to work these stations, and they're going to stay at home, and I'm going to rove. It'll actually plot out a map showing these are the ideal places for you to go to work all of the people that are going to be stationary.
Okay, so essentially you get a plot like this for each of those stations saying all the other places on the map, how good the signal would be.
Right. Yeah, this map is just a basic, if I'm sitting here with an antenna at whatever height, what is the propagation going to look like using the algorithm that we
where you're at.
determined. Yeah.
Would it be possible, or maybe to have in the path calculator part, maybe like a pick list for the beacons?
Yes, that's
Yeah, we're going to get to that.
Okay.
all of these are planned as well for both automated and manual beacon report collection, because that's the one critical thing. Sorry if I'm stealing your thunder, Jim. The one critical thing we need to make things much better is just more data. We can get all of the weather data we have right now. It's amazing, but we still need. Okay, I heard this beacon at exactly this time and day, and its signal level was X. We need that throughout the year. I had tried training a machine learning model based on the data we have now, and it didn't work very well because the vast majority, probably 90% of the contacts we have, were during the contests. So it weights very, very heavily on those months, and it says, oh, you're in April now. There's no contacts that are confirmed, or fewer contacts that are confirmed, so I'm going to rate it really poorly. So we just need more data from everybody.
Do the beacons report back into is there like an RBN part to the beacons or not? I'm not.
There will be. I'm working on that right now.
So what about data that's been done from contract studies? Like I'm familiar with one study, was atmospheric data from the study was by the Air Force. It was quite a few years ago. But I think there are other microwave studies that have been done for propagation. Have you looked at that data and potentially using any kind of data of that type?
It probably is, because we were pulling, I forget the name now,
so AI has found it, you think, and pulling it in?
Well, it's the RF propagation, I'll just call it a white paper. But it's taken that into account. Oh, ITUR P.453-14.
Okay.
So it's taken all of that into account as well. And if you want to read through everything, I'll paste the link to the current plain text version of the algorithm.
Okay.
Great questions and discussion. Yeah, I flipped this up to 47 gigahertz. I've got to turn my volume down. I have to turn it up to hear you guys, turn it down because it sounds like I'm shouting in it. But look here at 47 gigahertz, and there's actually looks better than 24, and that's not uncommon that there'd be some distance from the attenuation line. But as I come in here, trying to come in here, oh, there's Allen, Texas. This may be as far in as I can come. Yeah, I think it is. So I was looking back here to the west. It looks like there is a possibility that you could hear a beacon at Denton if it was on top of the women's dorm at 47 gigahertz. Now, there's no ERPs in here or other data, but if I could see a bunch of green between Denton and Allen, then I would expect if I call Al, he's listening to the 47 beacon successfully. So it's interesting that we have some good conditions on 47 gigahertz and some not so good at the same time that we have differences at 24. There's just a lot of empirical testing, sounds like we need to do. Now, while I'm here, I'm going to come over because this is something that Graham added, because he told me, hey, we have the data, why don't we just have a weather map? So if I click on this to the right, you can get to this a couple different ways, but if I click on weather map, and Graham, you may have to step us through this, but temperature I understand, surface temperature. And it correlates somewhere between 15 and 30 degrees centigrade. And then there's these others.
Yeah, most of them. Essentially, this whole project has taught me that I need to learn more meteorology, because we're basically doing what meteorologists do, and then try and predict things that, ducts in the atmosphere may only be a meter high. We don't know how thick they are. And then if a slight breeze comes in, it could knock the top off of one. Most of them don't matter too much. PWAT has to do about the total moisture content of the atmosphere, and refractivity is from the NOAA satellites, how reflective the ground is compared to past times. So typically, dense clouds, dense humidity in the atmosphere. It just started raining here now, so it's probably going to get more dense soon. But this is essentially the raw HRR information that we get. And then the next row of things is all at different altitudes. So you can also skip to, you can go to ducting if you want. And that's where the HRR data detects that there are ducts. It's very, very coarse. It's only doing 250 meter vertical slices of the atmosphere. So it has to be a very big duct, very stable for it to see it whatsoever.
Are we getting data up here to would cover the Great Lakes?
Yes. Yeah, it covers, it's a latitude, but it covers all.
Okay,
all
here's some.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I said, this ducting is only, hey, this is a really, really, really big duct. But conversely, that may not be ideal, because it may not be the right size to be able to refract, say, 10 gigahertz waves. It could be way too big. We don't know.
Okay, very good. Looks like they got a little bit going on, as you might expect in the Gulf. And no joy for you, Ben. It's not going that high. All right, I'm getting bogged down here, so let me keep moving. Beacons. Okay, so we have input some beacons here. This is a facility or feature. Let me go to submit beacon and just show you what the input looks like. Now, I think that Graham built this overnight because it looks like there's some new stuff here. So you put in a frequency, a call for the beacon, the grid. You can get real granular here, or the lat long. But if you put in the grid, it will calculate the lat long and vice versa. And you give the EIRP in milliwatt, the height above ground for the antenna, and whether or not there's a bearing or for a directional array on the beacon, or the word omni. And then if there is a directional array, you put the beam width here. And I assume this is the 3 dB beam width.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about this, although I assumed it was the 3 dB beam width, and I input a couple of beacons with that understanding, or really mine. So then there are these modes. To select, and then whether or not it's on the air, and some additional notes. So these are the ones that we have input.
Just to comment on the modes, some
Yes.
can support more than one mode. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you'll be able to do that, to put in 2 or 3 modes or whatever.
I can change it so we can do that. There's also a note section, so you can put in, this
Yeah.
and then this.
Yeah, so the note on mine right now says modulates CW carrier and Q65C60, but I chose the Q65C60 as the mode. But when you sweeten it up, then I'll add the other, or change the other, or you can help me change the other. We'll see, I do have editability. Let's just look at Greg's beacon right here, AA5C, Echo Mike 13, Sierra Fox, 500 milliwatts, 75 feet above the ground. And then if we click down here where it says show estimated current coverage, it shows a sweet spot right in here, and we can hover. We could zoom in and look. There, it looks like it's reaching the Sulphur River on the north side, or Red River, it's called there. Getting down to Dallas, out maybe to Commerce and Sulphur Springs. But this is in the good green. Now, there's a calculation that's scoring and estimating the signal strength. And then, of course, right around the beacon, like at Lavon, we could get a signal report from Keith. Looks like it's minus 99 dB. So that's probably rocking your S meter pretty good. Here's the list we have so far. We have KM0T in Iowa. And we have a few of the beacons that are on the women's dormitory at 280 feet in Denton. So that's beacons. Now let's look here if we haven't lost you. So this is the contact map. I assume that this is everything that's in our database. Is that a fair statement?
Yes. It pulls live, so if you add a new contact, it'll show up immediately.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that. So let's just zoom in on Winnipeg here. And there will be an observation here, Barry, and that is that if the contacts were logged in such a way that they only use 6-digit grid versus a 10-digit grid, it's going to have a more precise location than you will see right here. So as you see, there's 2. And I'm pretty sure this is you in all cases. but I see a high frequency one right here. So let's just click on that if we can. Yeah, it takes a knack to get the finger here. Okay, 75 gigahertz, single sideband, 37 kilometers, VE4 to VE4, M8 SA. Now, by clicking View Details, you can see the detail of this contact. Now, I'm going to guess that this is a resolution issue again, where your partner may have been on top of this peak, but because of the 4-digit grid or 6-digit grid, it's centered that and it's placed it over here.
Yeah, they were on top of a 22-story building.
Okay, that would this is SRTM data, so this would be the ground. Anyway, you see a lot of information here that was the real-time data at the time. There's an HRR model profile here.
So if we look at a contact that we made and we notice that the data could be improved, is there a way to edit the database looking at this page to correct things?
Yes and no. Right now, there is user registration, but right now only Jim and I have admin. There's that flag is invalid, but that's more right now for like this is just blatantly wrong, a 10,000 kilometer link or something. I'll make a note to add that though.
Yeah, because then you can basically crowdsource the removing of the poison data, making it
there you go
pure.
Yeah, exactly. And things like, oh, I know I was on top of this 22-story building and not on the ground next to it.
Yeah, well, that you would just change your antenna height to say 220 feet or whatever.
Right.
Good one.
That's one of the biggest problems is just 6-digit grids. I just had to delete 800 something contacts because they had the same source and destination grid. So it looks like they're standing right next to each other.
Yeah. Well, they're probably not too interesting in training a database anyhow, because if they were in the same grid.
Exactly.
This probably looks familiar to Tony, although it would give you a headache if you look at it very long. But these are Lake Erie point-to-point contacts in the contest, probably more than anything. And you can dig right down into it and find yourself. Just takes a little time. But this is what is sitting in our database. Mike, I know that the world record contact is in here. I can't remember if it was precisely on the mountaintops, but I think one side is.
Yeah, I was going to get back to you on that. I noticed the height profile seems to be like a flat Earth, not a curved Earth, because the path was nearly obstructed. You can probably click on it. I can just illustrate it right now, but because there's only 122 contact in there, I think. You can find it by the color. Move up across the bay or to the right.
There's a K6ML to KB6BA and N9JIM.
That's it. That's the one, yeah.
Yep.
So when I look at this on Hey What's Earth, the curved Earth profile shows that spike in the middle nearly intersecting the path. So I don't know whether this was done as a flat Earth and it doesn't have the Earth's curvature included, or it's because the endpoints are wrong. The endpoints are both elevated, so that looks approximately right. And it's 10-digit grids, so not sure what's wrong, but
yes,
the display itself isn't showing that correctly. The actual algorithm and scoring does take into account not only the curvature of the Earth, but also the spheroid bulge that the Earth has.
Good. Okay. So it's just the illustration here that's wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Great.
Graham, how hard would it be to toggle this view to a curved Earth view back and forth?
That's what I was just making a new issue for. I've created a few since this meeting started.
Okay. Yeah. We have a Kanban board with, it looks like a professional project. All right. The last thing is just to look at this database because I want to illustrate one. We'll pick a piece of poison, okay? And that is, I saw a contact that was wrong, and it's between these two operators. This is Pat and Paul Perryman. And if you look at this contact right here, it's a contest contact where Pat was at Millwood Lake. And that's not Echo Nancy 33. It's this, here's the reciprocal contact logged by Pat, where he got it right, EM33AQ. So this one needs correction because it shows a 1,264 kilometer contact, and Pat wasn't up there in wherever that is.
Minnesota.
Iowa.
Okay.
So bad data does exist, and we need that ability to correct that or flag it as invalid and get it corrected. So you can submit a contact here. Here's the submit page. You can also do this by way of uploading a CSV file, which is the way that I've done it when I got inputs from different folks. Unless I just got a single contact, and then I just use this page.
I'll make a suggestion for a way to sort of review the contacts. If you had the option to say on the contact map, show all contacts involving K6ML, then I could at my leisure go in and improve the data on each of those contacts based on whatever I know, like the exact time of day or antenna height, stuff like that. And so this is along the lines of my earlier comment about crowdsourcing the purifying of the data.
So a filter on the map
To say
by
just show these somebody
a call sign.
station's contacts, and then that station could go in and, if you added this edit mode, if they were a member of the website or whatever, they could then validate all their contacts, probably take
Good suggestion.
if they wanted to.
Yeah, the map is a good suggestion. Right now, you can also search like Jim was doing just a minute ago on the raw contacts page.
Oh, search is fine too, yeah. But
Yeah, you can search for both sides of the contact if you need to search for a specific one or something.
I'm sorry I'm late, but how I fat fingered that obviously. So what the process would have caught that? Because that's clearly an error on my part.
Well, why would we catch that?
Well, it's all user submitted data. So if somebody says they did this contact, we just have to kind of trust that it's right.
Yeah, and we actually have a user that has a contact over 1,000 kilometers that's legitimate. I just happened to find that one, Paul, because it was on the first page, the first time I looked at the data.
And I was curious where that data even came from, because I don't ever remember submitting anything like that to anybody.
Turned in a contest log.
It's probably a busted context log. You probably have a log check report on that contact because one of the grids is wrong.
And this is from the last contact, right? The last contest?
24, probably.
All of them now.
All of them.
2019.
So because I haven't been on any of these bands but the last couple of years, so it makes me want to go back and find that contact and see what the real genesis of it is. But I put it in as a contest log entry, and it's that far out of whack, I would have seen that when I was calculating my score and stuff, and it would have stuck out like a sore thumb. So somewhere, either in the translation from the big database or somewhere along the way, there's foul ball, and I want to make sure if it was me and Fat Fingered, I'll own it. But if not, if it is, then I need a corrective thing in my own process, right? If I look at my contacts and go, hey, that's wrong, I could have seen that a mile away.
Yeah, this is exactly what we got from the ARRL. So whatever's in their database is exactly what went into ours.
Yeah, if you did a log check report on that year's contest, you probably find the ARRL doc for that contact because it was an error.
Very possibly.
Okay. Well, I've only been in like 2 contests, so it shouldn't be too hard to find where this thing came from.
Well,
We have the date, Paul. It's in 24.
right. It's you've got EN23AQ.
Yeah,
to be
I see the
Echo
problem.
Mike. Yeah.
Yeah, I see the problem clearly, Pat. I was foul balled, but I I would have thought I'd seen it when I put it in because it would have had a great big score or something, right?
Yeah, probably would have been.
Yeah. But you need to tighten up, buddy.
Oh yeah, that's it.
Nice try.
Get your act together.
All right, I got to get back to this. We're having too much fun. Okay, so I wanted to kind of come to a close with this one. There's a quote from a guy named George Box. Some of you may have heard this, but all models are wrong, some are useful. And I just need to remind us that there are limitations because they are simplifications of reality. I think these are pretty close, but they can't capture every detail or nuance of the systems they represent. The usefulness of a model should be judged by its ability to provide insights and guide decision making rather than the absolute accuracy. And I think this is where we will go for the next years. And I hope by the time we get through this spring, summer / late summer, fall period, we will have enough empirical experience to be able to say that, to what extent we can trust this and to what value it has become. I know one thing. We've got to be careful of our thinking of saying we're only going to go out on microwave activity days, because we ran an analysis on the last couple of years on how many times we would have had good conditions on 47 gigahertz. And what, like, of course they run in scales, so it's like average to good to great to excellent. But we had 5 or 6 that we missed completely because they were not on mad days or other days that I could get off work. So I think this is going to have to help us change our thinking. Sure, we still want to go on the microwave activity days and get out there, but the expectations should be lowered or heightened according to what we're seeing in the predictions. And then you don't get all disappointed because you drove 50 miles or 100 miles or 150 miles and the band was flat. Whereas if it looks good on Wednesday and you can make it happen, then that might become our operating mode in the future. It sure will be mine. We need to prove by testing. And that's all I've got on that. Other discussion or questions? Thank you for the discussion so far.
I have a couple of comments. First of all, on the modeling thing, I think models are truly can be good, and over time they get better and better. Just look at the weather forecasting over the years; it's gotten better and better. And so the work you guys are doing on this will make it better. And the other thing is that on the refractive index thing, if you equate this to like fiber optics, there's a step index fiber where light bounces off the true change in index of refraction of the materials and follows its path down the fiber. And then there's a graded index, which it means it's bent gradually as it moves away from the center of the fiber. And I think you can have the same scenario in a duct. And in the fiber, if you have a step index, then you can have signals arriving at the end at different times because they can follow many different paths, and less so if you have graded index. So it makes it better for higher frequency. So if we have graded index type ducking, then I think that could be better. So it's just a nonlinear index of refraction, or a differential type refraction as it moves through the atmosphere, I believe. That's just my thought anyway.
Right, and that's exactly what it's just starting to do with more detail about the, like right now we're basically taking a crashed airplane and trying to figure out why it crashed. We know the conditions are like this. What went into making it like this? So the first step is identifying those ducts, and then, like you said, it's only going to be refractive for a certain frequency. So that's why some things like typically 10 and 24 gig are inverse with each other. So if it's really good 10 gig day, it's going to be a bad 24 gig day. But there could be multiple ducts. There could be all sorts of things. We don't know. Right now we're trying to collect as much data as we possibly can to kind of gradually improve the model so it gets a little better every time.
Thank you for that, Bob.
Would like WSJTX data be worthwhile? If you had two stations that could transmit, or beacons that could report back on what they actually are getting?
Yes.
Yeah, they definitely could. What I'm working on right now, it's very early, but like the beacons on TWU are non-line of sight to me. So I'm working on, I still have to put in connectors on the coax that's sitting outside in the rain now. I'm going to put up a receive dish to an SDR and basically take, 1 minute to 5 minute measurements of the signal level. The raw signal doesn't matter. It's just how it varies based on the weather data. So essentially the plan is to build out a bunch of those and say, hey, if you want to participate, listen to whatever beacon. That's why the beacon page came about. So then we'll be able to see, okay, these are the reports that this beacon is getting, and then from that go back and train our model. So none of what's on the site right now is training the model. That happens offline because it's just way too intense.
Yeah.
It's just data collecting. And then every time there's an update to our propagation model, that gets reflected back in the code. So like that's changed twice, I think, since the meeting started, because I've been working on it.
Kind of like a whisper, like a whisper type setup, right? Where
exactly.
I can set my dish up in the backyard and hook it up to the computer and let it run for an hour or two, and you would have that data.
Because we need to see what happens during various precipitation types. What happens if it's foggy outside? What happens when a front comes through? Like all the different variables, we have to account for all of those.
Yeah, we're looking for really permanent monitoring, David, where we set up a receiving system that is up 24/7, and it will have a specific job to do.
That would be cool.
And we're talking to different folks right now. We'll have a report on it more later, but the idea would be to sample multiple beacons at one receiver using an SDR receiver, and then link that information back into the model. Now, you couldn't use the same receiver to do 24 and 47, but you could listen to 2 or 3 47 beacons on a single SDR.
Right.
So we're working on that. That's something to come, because we realized, and Bob really was the one that brought this up last meeting, is that the most valuable data, I mean, it's a toss-up, but I mean, the most valuable continuous training data will be links that are monitored 24/7 on the frequencies we're interested in.
Yeah.
Then, of course, the community crowdsourcing it, as Mike calls it, inputting their contacts and giving us data away from the contest period. We do have data away from the contest periods, but the great vast majority of the data is from 10 gigahertz and up contests for 6 years.
Yeah.
So the other thing is that at least your early data and the contest data is largely going. I made a contact, and from the mode you're inferring a certain minimum margin. Whereas with the beacons and WSJT, you can have signal reports, and you can know what the actual margin was.
Right.
On a scale.
You're right.
That's what we need more of, because it's already valuable that we know that the contacts were made, but it's also important that we know when they couldn't be made. And there's not a log that will allow us to do that except by continuous monitoring.
Distinction on the contest data between this guy was 5'9" plus rocking me out of my chair, and I barely made this contact. Well, if it says CW, it was weak, but that's about it.
And all of the propagation data and signal levels and things like that just presume CW, because that's going to be best case for everything.
Yeah, so we don't have that dynamic range to know this was a Q65 contact at the very edge, minus 26, versus, positive 10.
So the point is, for some of these, the point is for these modes, for the beacons and WSJT, now you have that data. So any other entry in the record or whatever was the actual signal level.
Yeah. Well, it goes without saying that we've come a long ways in a month when we had 4 contacts. And now we're having a discussion about continuous monitoring of beacons, which, there's a lot of work to that. I know that Mike Lavelle is the beacon builder, you might say, and I think that goes back to your satellite days.
No, I just got the
But every time I see an email from the Bay Area Society, Mike is working on a beacon, and I can sympathize with that. In fact, that's the subject of the next presentation.
Let me just mention that ideally what we would be monitoring on the beacons, I think, is vertical and horizontal polarization reception. And then you would also know what was happening to the signal as it was passing through these different ducting systems. Just to make it more complicated.
Well, right now, I think the whole model right now assumes everything's horizontal, right? I mean, there's no statement about polarization anywhere.
Well, but it would benefit. I mean, it gets exponentially more difficult like that.
Yeah. I think it's fair. I mean, that's what we're all using. I mean, the people on moon mounts, they worry about polarization, but on terrestrial, everybody is pretty much horizontal.
Yeah.
But you may find out that you're missing the boat, and if you had a switch to switch between the two modes, you might be able to make a cue that you couldn't make before.
Yeah, no, my point is just nobody's generating transmissions on the other polarization.
Don't have any data to work with. Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm. So you can't collect that data at the moment, and we're not marking anything.
If it's being transmitted horizontal, it gets bounced around in a duct. It can easily do all sorts of weird things.
Yeah.
A side question for you guys, since it's starting to get storm season, what's the minimum height or you'd look for maybe making rain scatter contact, ideally?
Rain scatter is one thing that this whole project data set, everything completely ignores. It does not care about it whatsoever.
Yeah, you get on Slack and you get on rainscatter.com
And go after it. Okay.
and
I
observe.
didn't know, just from
Yeah.
experience. I mean, it's like, don't waste your time on 20,000 foot clouds.
Yeah, don't waste your time.
Okay. All right.
We love the 50 to 70,000 tops with high reflectivity when it's between us and the station we're trying to work.
That's what I was after. Thank you.
Well, I guess to that point, though, your database does include contest contacts, some of which are rain scatter, and they're not flagged as such, probably.
Right, and some of the contacts that it did import were it had some EME and some rain scatter. Where we could, we filtered those out, but that's part of the whole crowdsourcing because we only know what we have and what we could find.
Well, and
Sorry, Mike, go ahead.
I was going to say, as part of that review process, you could have a place for users to indicate that it wasn't a straight terrestrial contact, it was a rain scatter, or it was an EME. And then you can either reject it or put it in a different bin in the model.
Right.
Graham, is it possible to evaluate I guess rain scatter is performed forward scatter and back scatter, but for the forward scatter case, could we know that there was a potential? Well, first of all, it's a 10 gigahertz contact over 500 kilometers. Second, there's a proximity of thunderstorm activity near the midpoint at that time in space, at that date.
It depends. We should be able to figure that out. It's not indicated right now because we have all of the weather data. Essentially, behind the scenes, what the site is doing is when contacts are submitted, it goes and fetches the historical weather data as much as it possibly can for those two spots and everything in between up to a certain resolution. And then it runs the algorithm on it and then shows the results. But since we already have that data, there's nothing preventing us from saying it looks like there was possible rain scatter, in between the 2 points.
Maybe you could do a cooperative thing with, I'm sorry, I don't remember his name, but MrRainscatter.com to just basically apply his algorithm to the historical data and generate, he generates maps basically showing where the likely reflection point is for the given current weather and a current path. So, maybe you can leverage what he's already done.
I'll call that a rainy day project, Graham.
Yeah,
no pun intended.
It's raining right now.
Okay. Oh, that's an interesting thought, though. There's try to flag those rain scatter contacts and just like Mike says, put them in a different bin because I think we're going to be going there before it's over. I mean, if you've got a mountain of data and it can give you one more analysis that can be useful that we've never had before, then why not go for it?
Exactly. And the whole point, like you were saying, Jim, is to get people out there and to make contacts. So it doesn't really matter the method of how to make it. Just, hey, if you can make it, go out there and do it.
I appreciate that. All right, well, let's go on to the beacon project here. Along those same lines as we've been talking, I mean, all of our beacon projects have been for the purpose of furthering propagation studies and helping us understand that the unknown, I guess. Now we know more, but we'd like the validation, and we'd like to incorporate this constant monitoring back in. So first of all, you got to have a source of the signal. And so here comes another one. Now, I promised this one to Al. So I think he intends to ask for it to be co-located on one of Graham's towers. But I'm going to hand it to him and shake his hand and see where it ends up. So let's get started. First of all, we based the design on the same RF deck that's in the tri-band beacon. So if you're looking at this, you see 10 gigahertz on top, 24 in the middle with the GPS and distribution unit at the back. And then you see the 47 on the bottom. All of these are driven by RF zeros and various LOs. To be mixed and then arrive at the RF frequency. Okay. Here is the original tri-band beacon RF deck. And this is an 8 by 10 inch chunk of 1/4 inch aluminum. So you'll see the RF zero in the back left. There's a 435 megahertz SAW filter kind of here. And then you see the Cooney LO in the back here. And these two inputs plus the, let's see, what am I missing? No, there's just two inputs. So it'll be the IF and the LO are coming into this board with the pipe cap filters. And then the RF output, which is mixed and amplified and filtered, is coming through this attenuator on the lower right, and then through this blue cable up to the quadrupler, which then is got a waveguide attachment to this W1 gigahertz horn. And that's how that goes. And so I wanted to make a smaller package so that you don't have to bear hug it when you pick it up. And so I'll get to that here in a minute. But this is the topology. So again, you've got the RF zero on the far left, which will modulate CW plus a carrier plus Q65. Runs through a sawtooth filter here. The third harmonic is picked off. And we go into this WA1 MBA board. Now, he made these special after, if you saw this tri-band beacon in Tucson, it had all the discrete components on it. It didn't have this nice little board that's, you barely can, I mean, it's just a little tiny board. It's about that big. So, and it takes an LO input, IF input, does some amplification, some filtering with the 3 pipe cap filters, and then out comes 11772. Now, the frequency I've got here is the way that Al's beacon is designed, because it will come in at a frequency that is it's 10 kilohertz away. I can't remember if it's higher or lower than the other beacon. It's higher, about 10 kilohertz higher. And so I had to get to these. That was all about just programming the DB6NT LO, because you see its frequency is 11,337.0875. And once that's mixed with 435, you come out with 11,772.0875. You multiply that times 4, You come in at 47088.350. That don't make sense. I think our other one's at 360, so I might have that backwards. Which one's the higher and lower? The levels are really super important, and I can never remember them. So I've written them down on this sheet so that I won't forget them. But, you know, there's a sweet spot for this mixer. It's a mini circuits mixer on that board. It calls for 7 dBm. And that's the perfect input. And then this quadrupler's kind of sensitive. You don't want to exceed 6 dBm. So I had to mess with the attenuators. You know, you use a really cheap 3 dB attenuator and it attenuates 6 dB at this frequency. So anyhow, I just kept trying to keep using a cheap attenuator until I found the right level. And I got it right. Out comes 12 dBm from the quadrupler. The sectoral horn is 19 dBi. I calculate losses of probably around 0.7. This is a direct attach in the new design. No waveguide. And then, so it gives you an ERP of about a watt. I wanted to show you the effect of this sawtooth filter. Of course, those of you that have experience know how well they work, but this thing is really pretty awesome. It turns the spectrum over here on the left, which is 1 gig wide, and there's our signal of interest right there. Drops it by about 2 or 3 dB inserted, but look how it cleans up things. The signal tone spacing is kind of tricky on these 47 gig beacons. I'm not going to go over this, but it is in here should you want it. The main thing is you've got to get the tone spacing to come out right, or otherwise, if you say you're transmitting Q65C60, well, the receiving party is going to dial that in on their WSJTX. And if your spacing's goofy, they won't be able to decode it. So as we go up, first by the harmonic, because we picked off the third from 145, that's a ×3 multiplier. And then we quadruple. The mix doesn't add anything, so you don't have to consider the tone spacing in the mix. But when you multiply through the quadrupler, you end up with a multiplication factor of 12. The non-intuitive thing is that you have to set the RF0 up for 1740 for a specific reason to get the tone spacing right. And you'll have to do this math here. If you do it and understand it, I'll give you a gold star. Here is the actual RF0 config. This is the, this with the design will get you right there. The multiplication factor is 12. Here's the frequency of 1740 megahertz. And here is the string for the default call sign. Now this is the important thing, the W5LUA/B. That's used in CW string. And the bottom W5LUA/B is used in the Q65. The grid, I stuck it in here, but it's never really used. And the reason why is because of this config up here that says wait for valid GPS before transmitting. 1 equals yes. Now why did I do that? Why do you wait for a valid GPS signal before you transmit? Well, I modified the code. So this test up here is testing that switch. And if I have configured it as such, which I have, then it drops to, while not valid, just yield, else get the locator. And that's the magic. And it will just go get decompose the GPS string, will do the math, it will get the locator, and now we have the locator for where the box is at the moment. Then we just stick a 0 on the end of that string, indexing in these byte arrays starts at 0. So this is actually the 7th position because we've got 6 characters in this locator variable. And then we're going to copy the call, which is from the previous configuration where we said W5LUA stroke B, into the MGM message, which is the WSJT message that's going to be transmitted. It's called MGM message. Then we stick a space. Then we stick the locator, which is 6 long. And then we stick a terminating 0 into memory there. Then we fall down here and we call the setup Q65 with the given mode, Q65C, whatever's configured back here by this value where it says, where does it say? Where does it say? Where does it say? Here, at the bottom. Q65 mode number 12, it doesn't show you with the dots, but 12 is Q6560C. And that's how it does it. To program the DB6NT frequency, I'm talking to Greg McIntire now, because he's done the pain here. If this is what you're trying to get to, in my case it was on the new beacon, I want to get 11.337.087.500, you come in like this. So first of all, I left it like this on purpose because there's a difference between that V and that V. The second V is a lowercase v, and you have to use case-sensitive commands here. You can use PuTTY, you don't have to use this thing, but there's a lot of ways to communicate with the LO. But here I'm saying gigahertz frequency is 011. It acknowledges that with an A. A is the happy path. Megahertz frequency is 337. A for happy path. Lowercase k for kilohertz frequency, 87. A for happy. Somehow I did it twice. It don't mind that. It's sticking these in register positions. And then finally, hertz frequency, 500. And that is how we build that string up there. And you don't forget to put in the SFR command. That saves the frequency into EEPROM. So now you can turn the thing off and on. Come back. So here's the math. You take the LO, add the IF frequency. That gives you a number. Multiply it times 4. There's your frequency. Final R frequency. Ready to deploy. Here it is in its little package. You got the WA1 MBA board over here on the left. Got a sectoral horn here. I can also switch this to a conical horn, but I figure if Al puts this close by, it's going to be really loud anyway, and so getting more of an omni pattern would probably be better than the conical horn, especially if we have a receiver out to the west that will be monitoring the beacon 24/7. Back in the background here is the quadrupler. On the lower deck is the RF0 little power supply, and you can't see it tucked in back here on the back plane, but the DB6 NTLO is back there. And then this box, this black box slung down here is the GPS. And below that, there's a terminal strip with all the DC connections. To drive this, you either have 12 volts on the tower, or I have a 100 amp hour LiPo and a 100 watt panel, solar panel, and a controller that will give you power for up to 3 days of cloudiness. So we can withstand up to 3 days. Now this beacon does not have remote turn on and turn off capability, so once it gets flipped on, and there's the switch on the right. My dad used to say X equals 2 pi over square root of LC, but where the hell's the switch? There's the switch. So I want to give you a demo. And you know, my comment, usually demos don't go well, but I've been letting this stuff burn in over here for the whole time we've been on this meeting. So I'm going to switch cameras. And I'll also switch the audio. Let's see, what am I doing wrong? Just somehow I need to get this in the main screen, don't I? It doesn't work that way. I thought it would. We've got a camera trained on the beacons. I see that it's up in the picture that would normally show my face. Let me see if I can at least get the audio to track over there.
I think you need to stop screen sharing
Okay.
to get the camera.
That might make a difference, huh?
Is the beacon the both boxes, or is it just the one on the far right?
It is both boxes. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're a little muffled, but yeah, we can hear you just fine. So
Okay.
the whole beacon is both of these boxes then.
No. Let me see if I can position my computer so that I can talk and point at the same time. I actually do have a pointer. So this is the IF radio up here. And then
705.
two signals. And they're 10 kilohertz apart. I'll turn up the volume. So this is the new beacon down here.
Okay.
So the multiplier's back here, the filter board's here, the RF0 is here, the GPS is here. This is the other beacon over here with 3 different RF
Okay.
boards. The
Okay.
47 is turned on.
All right.
And I want this to ID in CW so folks that don't know CW will know which one this one is tracking. This one on the left is the W5LUA beacon. This one on the right will sign W5HN stroke B. Here, after we listen to this for a few minutes, I'm going to demonstrate how the remote control works through a cell phone app, and it will communicate with this device up here. I don't think you can see the antennas that are up here. I've got a stack of antennas on top of the beacon, but it's constantly monitoring for commands, and when it receives those commands, it will analyze them through the Arduino program and then turn on the appropriate MOSFET, which in turn turns on the different RF decks. Right now, we've just got the GPS turned on, and we've got the 47 deck on. Here comes our CW. So whatever I'm tuned to here, we'll hear the ID here in a minute. It's this one we're listening to. So it's both beacons are gonna sign EM12IL because that's where we're at. We're at my house right now. I pulled this off I had this on the tower, and I pulled it off. So we're listening to the right-hand beacon right now, which signs W5HN, but it right now has a grid of EM12IL. Now we'll spin up here and listen to the other one. All you have to do is do anything here and you'll get Doppler. Any wiggle, this is the 47 rig, by the way. This is what's doing the receiving. But again, if I wiggle my hand, anything, I can walk clear across the shop, be 20 feet away, and you can hear Doppler from all the signal bouncing around in here. Now to set up the IF rig, I had to turn the RF gain all the way down as far as it would go, because it's just swamping. These 47 gigahertz signals are swamping. Yeah, we're listening to this one. If you can see this red light right here, that will flash the CW when it comes. Right now it just pulses on every symbol, every group of symbols that are sent. The yellow light is the GPS heartbeat.
These beacons are only one way, right? They transmit only. They won't receive a signal and report back.
No, they're transmitters.
Transmit only, yeah.
They're transmitters. All right, now I'm going to use my phone. It's right here. You can see I'm monitoring our broadcast. And I'm going to go to the app where we do these commands. And here it is. And so I'm going to turn on the 10 gigahertz beacon, which is this command right here. And you can click this arrow, and that will turn on this top deck. So first you'll see there comes the MOSFET right there, and now it's got a power indication here. It'll take it a minute for this RF0 to find the GPS. There comes the red light. It should flash 3 times. 1, 2, 3. That's just a software switch I put in there so I'd know which version of software is there.
I think we lost Jim.
3. Now let's turn on the 24 deck.
Come back.
By coming back here. I don't think that'll probably show up there, but
It's like Jim is muted.
We lost you, Jim. Oh, he is muted, isn't he?
Well, I think he had 2 different monitors going and one of them was muted and he may not realize the other one has dropped out yet. So hopefully he's watching and can see that he's missing out.
He'll get to do it twice. He'll get a dry run. He's doing a dry run now, and he'll
can
do it
you hear
again.
me?
Yeah, we're back. You're back. We can hear you now.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I think I shut down my monitor by accident, pressing all the buttons on I was showing how to send commands to the beacon. And if you're still watching, we'll turn it off. And that's, let me throw this out here in front here. So it's, first we'll turn off the 10, which is the top deck. That's turn off. 24. Turn off. And 47. Power off. And then finally, GPS. Power off. Now, those go through a queue, so they may take a minute to get there, but eventually all of that will acquiesce and
it will shut down. The only thing that will stay on is the cell phone monitoring that's up there, and it'll stay on at all times. This beacon box here is drawing a little bit more than 5 amps when it's all up. So if it's on a solar powered battery, it's going to have to be pretty healthy, and it would be better if it's on power. I'm using a 20 amp LiPo on it right now. So I can take questions if there are any.
Is there a Wi-Fi option for the app that you're using in the cellular control board?
There is, I know there is. There is not. It's not employed here, but I do know there are options. Any other comments? Yeah, I think we're down to the 24 gigahertz is still lit. Yeah, so wanted to have the ability to turn stuff on and off here because of originally I thought it would be powered by solar, and it would be an economical thing to turn on just one, check the propagation, and turn it off, and turn on another one, check the propagation. But in light of what we've talked about today, it might be best to try to locate this where we will have continuous power. Okay, everything has turned off in here. The only thing I see is the DC to DC converter showing 5 volts, and that's over to this hologram card, which has the cell connectivity. It's blinking, it's steady red and blinking blue, which means it has a signal. So I'll show you these antennas, maybe you can see them. So there's a radome on the left side, that's 10 gigahertz. That's a 40 Alfred slot. On the far right is it's at least 40 slots on 24 gigahertz. And then the middle antenna is the cell phone. Well, I'll bring up the agenda, which we've kind of jumped through. And then we'll just see what else we've got here. We're getting upwards of 4 hours in the meeting now. I note that we have a pretty strong attendance. Believe we're going to try to be back at David's place this next month. All right. Did you see the agenda? Welcome to North Texas Microwave slide.
We can see that just fine.
Okay. So this was what we just did. Here's some notifications of what else is left this month. Important to note that the Central States VHF has their spring sprints. we had talked about a potential antenna tune-up party on the 24th. I guess we need to think about this some more.
I think you mean the 25th.
Did we mean the 25th?
Yeah, because the 24th is a Friday. Well, unless we're talking about May.
Oh, really? Okay, let's see. What could be? Is May 24th a Saturday?
Sunday.
Sunday. Okay. Well, my fingers are going all over the place here. I tried to write on my piece of paper while I had it over the keyboard. I guess we just need to circle back and think about the tune-up party. We talked first about being 122 gigahertz, I think. And I'd love to do that, just to get the dust knocked off the gear.
Yeah, I probably won't be around that weekend.
Okay. Well, it ain't no fun. Okay. Here's the May schedule. So we're coming up on this now. May 2nd, be our activity day. Spring sprint on 902 and above, same day. And a meeting on May 9th. And then 6 meter spring sprint on May 9th also. Here's our perpetual stuff. And anybody got anything else they'd like to talk about or show off or brag about?
You've done a lot of good work there, Jim. We appreciate it.
Thank you. I need to make arrangements to come up and drop this beacon off to you.
Oh, we can do that.
Big shout out to Greg for talking to me about some different 10 gigahertz things, and I posted a link out there. I don't know if everybody saw it, but it was for printing a slimline feed horn holder, and I actually printed one, so it turned out pretty well. That's why I need the bolts for the dish.
Cool. David, what's the inside diameter of that clamp when it's snugged all the way?
A good question. I don't have that off the top of my head, but this is what I'll be using with it. This what is it? IOJ-XX.
Will it fit around the neck there?
Yeah, there's a spacer. There's a spacer that it goes on. So this latches up really nice.
Okay.
And this fits really nice. If you can see it.
Gotcha. Now, did you make the spacer, or where did that come from?
So the spacer came with the feed horn that I got this from DX Engineering. It's out of Italy.
Okay. What is the spacer made out of?
This spacer is 3D printed.
So it's a resin.
It's a resin. Yeah, it's probably PETG or maybe ABS.
That's going to be UV proof, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
very good.
The bracket this is printed in ABS, so UV resistant, UV proof.
Barry, do you have the death ray there?
And I ordered the Down East microwave transverter.
Very good. Is that a lethal weapon you've got, Barry?
This is my Artemis feed that I had for my 8-foot offset dish. I don't know if I can get it in the picture.
Yeah, it's showing up.
This I've got the preamps and bandpass filter because I was concerned about overload from cell sites, and because 2.1 gigs is fairly close. So, and now it's hard to see the feed, but I had to use a mesh. This is about 1 foot in diameter, so this is a 1.88 wavelength W2 IMU feed, which is basically what I think Al and I are using on 24, and it's really efficient for an offset dish. And this thing is about 3 feet long, so it really sticks out in front of the, of the dish, and was one of the problems I had when I tipped down. 14 degrees was as low as I could go before the feed would hit the ground. So, and then there's a circular polarization section here made out of old coffee cans, small coffee cans. Anyway, it was all for naught. Or,
Does the wire mesh serve the purpose of keeping the birds out, plus some RF steering?
it's strictly RF steering, and it didn't do anything to keep the birds out. I ended up having to stuff some plastic bags in the horn so that the smoke didn't accumulate. Because when it's mounted in the dish, it's pointed up, right? So low elevation.
That's cool.
That's all I've got.
Okay, we'll swing through this old business, new business. I did note that the micro grant from Irving Club Materials is out there. I'll get to that and probably list this 47 gigahertz beacon seeking some funding back to our club.
They're expecting I talked up the NTMS guys pretty heavy. They're looking forward to the submission.
Good.
Happy
Thank
to help
you.
submission, or if you guys want to do a WebEx or a Zoom or whatever, let me know. Happy to help.
Okay. I don't believe that Wes is with us, but we got a report from him. Al and I did on paid members, and after Al made a email asking for support, the number of paid members, I think it basically doubled, didn't it, Al?
Yeah, that's correct. So it's 60 some, and allowed donations as well.
Yeah. So good things to report there. So we know that these costs continue to increase. We're obviously ahead at this point. We'd like to stay that way. And it's coming up time to think about the ARRL Spectrum Defense Fund donation.
Well, I would certainly make a recommendation that we do a donation. It's been, I think, a year or so.
All right. Do you have an amount in mind, Al?
Well, I think we've done 300 in the past. I mean, that's a lot of members, but maybe 200 maybe. We do have reserve.
I think we should go 300 and keep up the pace that we have in the past when things weren't as good. Anybody want to second that?
I'll second it.
Bob seconds it.
I'll third it.
Anybody opposed? All right, so carried. Here's some kind of a stale slide, but anyway, we do have the option to donate now on the homepage, and people are using it. So it's been good decisions. I think Bob was the one that suggested we do that, and it's paid off. Do we have any motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
Second.
There's a second, couple of seconds. All right, guys, really appreciate your attendance today and your contributions. It's exciting times, and gotta probably expect even better.
Thanks for all the good work, Jim.
You bet.
Jim, thanks everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye, all.
Thanks, Jim.